morning and welcome to Atlantic Sunday on Atlantic Television Network. Atlantic Sunday is a syndicated live program of the network.
If they don't have internal collaborators, they won't really have a field day with their operations. So there must be some internal collaborators, either within the military, within the locals. These are things that they really need to find out if they must nip this in the bud. Because for me, what's the state of the border? How did these people come in? These are some of the things they need to find out. And for them to have taken over not just one local government, 2, 3, 4, 5 local government area, it leaves so much to be desired. It's something that I really desire urgent situation. I mean, really desire urgent measures so that they nip it in the bud. And for me, 5 local governments area overridden by insurgents, it's something that is not palatable. It's something that we shouldn't celebrate. It's something that must be condemned. So we must take this fight to them. Like I've always told people, crime fighting starts with intelligence gathering. Once you gather enough intelligence information, it's easy for you, but you don't wait for them to attack you. That way you're becoming reactionary and not proactive. So first they really need to sit down, find out where these people are coming from, who are their collaborators, the mode they come in, then beef up security. By the time they beef up security, either air patrol and the border patrol, then they really need to check how porous these borders are, which are the routes they come in from, how to curb it, how to block it, so that at the end of the day, you don't wait for these people to attack, because these locals are living at the mercy of these mujahideen or the terrorists, and it's not a good thing. Collecting levies, taxes from a local government.
It's very sad when people are living in fear, because that's the scenario that is painted here, living in fear. But I asked the question, the statement that was made, is it in any way assuring, or should I say reassuring, the people of their security?
That statement, it's not even reassuring enough, because he has not told the people what they want. I strongly believe that anything that has to do with defense and the military is something that is kept in secret, and he shouldn't also come to the air to tell the people, or he shouldn't even come
giving the information. How then will the people then, how would this be handled? How exactly would this be, taken care of? And how will the government even reassure the people of their security? More people would want to leave those states, migrate, because of the insecurity cases.
Yeah, first, like I pointed, I said there might be some internal collaborators. So that's why they need to go into proper intelligence gathering. Once they go into proper intelligence gathering, many things, and once they find out, and I always tell people that once the problem of a thing is known, it is half solved. So once they get to the root cause, know the internal collaborators, know where they are coming from, their mode of operation, they can sit down and profile a proper solution. And anything that has to do with military attack, they don't discuss it in the open domain. They go back, they do that. But for me, I still believe that they should intensify or redouble
Let's talk
their
about
efforts.
preventing things like this.
It's first border patrol. Proper and efficient border patrol. Make sure that those borders are properly manned, so that at their point of entry, that is where they are repelled.
Do we not have people manning the borders normally?
But we have very porous borders, and most of our borders are not fenced. They are just open. It's only the entry point where you have a small gate, but other entrances where they enter from, you don't know. So these are the areas that need to be properly manned. And we should also make use of drone cameras to ensure that once these kind of things are happening, from the drone camera, they could see where these people are coming from.
And one would even wonder what the emergency response is like in these places.
The response to such emergency, for me, I think is slow.
For 12 years, due to insurgent activities, the school, along with other secondary schools in the region, had been operating temporarily at the government secondary school in Damaturu since 2012. Now, Suleiman Tamali, the newly appointed principal of the school, expressed his intention to work closely with the local government to improve the standard of education at the school. And he visited the Gulani Local Government Council chairman, Dayabu Njibuwa, to seek a partnership for the development of the school. And the chairman, Njibuwa, highlighted that the reopening of the school signifies a major improvement in the security.
So if the school is reopening, it shows that Yobe State is safe, the local government is safe, but it's quite absurd, appalling that a school will be shut down for 12 years till today they are reopening. Something must have happened to the rural and aggregate economy of that area. The children in school, the pains they must have taken to attend school in other area. So, and also most of the facilities there must have been dilapidated, they must have been looted. So they are starting a brand new school, and I believe that all these things should be in place. But most importantly, they should also beef up security around that area. But so to say, or nevertheless, they have fought security to a standstill in Yobe State. We no longer hear, yes, insurgency in Yobe to a standstill. We no longer hear of sad tales coming from Yobe State. Now it has extended to other areas, but they still need to maintain the security around there.
How can we really get it right with security in Nigeria?
Like I always say, security is something that starts with intelligence gathering. Once you do proper intelligence gathering, you equip, you train your manpower.
Are we not doing all that? From reports, we always hear the security agencies telling us about intelligence gathering. Some of the operations you hear, due to intelligence gathering, we were able to find out this and that. We got this information. What else did you mention?
Equipping and training. And
do we not have all these?
And apart from training, you also retrain. Whether you like it or not, terror or the fight against terrorism.
All these weapons that they're using to carry out the crime.
Most of our neighbors, they are having one form of crisis or the other. Then this Islamization or this ISIS and their various cells, the Al-Qaeda, they have found their way into and sub-Saharan Africa. So most of these weapons are at their disposal. So that's how these things are able to come into Nigeria or even get to them. And because of the porous nature of our borders, they can also come in, perpetrate their acts, and go back to their bases.
But you know, normally when we hear cases of insurgency, insecurity in neighboring countries, it is only normal that
you should know your source of information. But you discover that these days people are even afraid of giving out information because of a reprisal attack.
Oh wait, I'm still hinged on this border of a thing. To the fact that we're saying that they came in through our borders, and then the report you're giving on some parts of the border being open, just the entrance, you just see a gate there, you see some people manning it. And one would wonder if that's the same way it is when you're entering into other countries. Do you enter? We know the strict measures. Some Nigerians usually complain when they're traveling to other countries and it's a problem. Sometimes when they say they are Nigerians, you know what they experience. Even the people who go illegally, you know, these people who go through the sea and all of that, you still find out that there's very strict measures in some of these places before they can go in. So why would we be talking about borders being porous and being open for anybody to come in?
There must be adequate border patrol. For borders to be in place because they are not fenced, then there should be proper patrol along that line. And if there's no proper patrol, it becomes very porous. No camera to know who goes in and who comes out. And for crying out loud, these are things that in saner climes they've gone beyond it, because they have proper and effective border patrol. They also have cameras to check the influx. And in that case, it will be easier. But here now, border patrol, I don't think we've done enough in terms of border patrol. In terms of security cameras, I don't think we have been able to do it. Otherwise, there's supposed to be kind of border patrol, so you know the situation on ground and also tackle it. And I believe that if there's effective border patrol, these insurgencies, they cannot, it will never thrive, because they will meet resistance at every point. But because they're always having a field day when they are coming, so it has become something that is used to them.
Okay, so when we talk about security being everybody's business, we know that. You also mentioned it. But is this a case of security being everybody's business? These are terrorists who are coming with sophisticated weapons, humiliating and terrorizing the people. So what role would you say the people have to play in securing their lives and their properties in this scenario?
First, the government needs to build that confidence in the people. What I say they need to is when the government fights them to a standstill, the people know that once they notice any strange face, they can escalate and report. But this one, if you report, nothing will be done. So it's better to even keep quiet for them. But if these people are meeting stiff resistance, where they fight them to a standstill, the confidence will be restored in the people. And then they can start giving out information. They can also give out information of their internal collaborators.
Do you think the local vigilante will have any role to play here?
First, of course, local vigilante has a very great role to play.
What kind of weapons do local vigilantes have?
Local vigilantes, for me, they are not even supposed to be too armed. What they are supposed to is to gather information.
So, okay.
Gather information and disseminate the information to the right and relevant authority to act on such information.
Because putting local vigilante on ground now, and you see what the weapons people are coming in. Even our security agencies, like you said, are saying their weapons are sometimes more sophisticated.
Putting local vigilantes at this point, when the government has not risen up to its challenges, is putting the lives of such vigilante members at risk. Because they don't have what it takes in terms of weapon to stand these people.
So they don't have a role to play here. That means
the only role they have to play
here
is they will be part of the intelligence gathering team. So that as soon as they notice any strange move, they escalate.
So we always hear talks about, in fact, some traditional rulers would say there is no how strange things will be happening in their environment and they will not be aware. In their community and they will not be aware. It's not possible.
No, most of these traditional rulers, they are also living on. It's more like a cancer. And the only way for you to take care of cancer, you must go through the knife, go through the surgery. So for me, it's something that must be at top of. First, the government needs to live up to its challenges.
Responsibilities?
Yeah, they need to live up to its responsibility. They need to take challenges and live up to responsibilities.
All right, and you also do not agree that local vigilantes have some sort of weapons?
Local vigilantes, they are not even permitted to carry weapons of such magnitude. If you give them weapons of such magnitude, it has some devastating and boomeranging effects.
Right, because this takes our mind back to the agro rangers that the president talked about earlier that are being released to certain farms to stop the cases of farmer-herders clash. It's more than farmers-herders clash. It's more like people dying almost, regularly because of their fights with farmers, that's between farmers and herders. So these agro rangers now, since we're talking about insecurity, we're talking about the north, these are also some of the cases that we hear of insecurity in the north.
For me, the only thing that will solve the crisis between the farmers and the herders are establishment of ranches, grazing ranches.
By who?
By the government.
The government should establish ranches for
Herders.
these businessmen.
For herders.
Why?
Okay, they should also establish their ranches. But if government has a kind of ranch facilities for them, they take their livestock there to graze. And at the end of the period of grazing, when they are ready, they are mature enough to be sold into, they bring them to the open market.
Well, you know that this discussion brought a lot of conflict earlier when the government talked about it. That was recommended, talking about the open grazing now. Oh, let's in different states, let's have a portion for them so that they can stay there with their cattle instead of walking around the state. And state governors came out to say they're not giving their lands to these people.
Then they should establish their ranches in their states.
But that recommendation has been made all this while.
But you cannot expect a southern governor they will not give to people to establish ranches for their selfish.
I think their fear was actually insecurity.
Of course, they should do it within their place.
And you know how these people can expand within a short period of time. They don't travel without their family members. When I say family, I mean extended family members. So they bring everybody, and before you know it, they start expanding.
They should
and
have,
that was their fear.
They should have ranches in the corners and
That's
states.
what I'm saying. That these recommendations of them having their own ranches have been made over and over again.
But the northern governors,
still the problem.
But the northern governors are resisting it.
No, we haven't heard northern governors resisting that.
Then they should have it in their place, because they are the ones who have more of the cattle. The operation comes, we hardly breed there except those ones that are coming. But otherwise, they should just establish their grazes, their ranches by this, and graze within their area. Bring to us, we'll buy.
Do you think there's more reason? There's more behind the reason they keep coming here, aside just looking for greener pastures for their cattle?
For me, it's beyond greener pastures for their cattle.
Then what exactly are we looking at here?
Here, I think they have a hidden agenda. They have a hidden agenda, and it's crystal clear. It's quite glaring that there's a hidden agenda.
So if you say they have a hidden agenda, and then you just say, get your lands in your communities and graze there, do you think they would want to do that when they actually, like you've said, are coming here for a reason? If
you go to a place and you're not welcome, you don't force yourself.
Depends on your agenda of going there.
These are the issues. So if you are not welcome in a place, you have to leave. But if you insist, then so you are fanning the embers of discord. You have a hidden agenda. It's like me coming to your house. I'm not welcome, and I insist I must stay. There's an issue.
So you're suggesting southern governors or governors from other states should tell them to leave? These are, remember, these are also Nigerians, and we have the right to be in any state we want to be as long as we're Nigerians.
Granted, there's freedom of movement. There are laws also hindering freedom of movement. We have freedom of speech, but I cannot come to air and say certain things about you which are unfounded. So that's the same thing with freedom of movement. If your movement can cause breach to public peace, if it's a security threat, you can be asked to leave.
All right, let's see how that goes. Although we've heard stories of some governors telling these people to leave their state, and they made sure of it. They made sure that these people actually left their state. But how long can that really be? Other states, we just have the governors complaining. And sometimes you ask questions like, does it mean that this governor doesn't have the power to do anything about this situation? Why do we usually complain about it like nothing can be done?
Yes, most of these governors, their powers are limited.
Concerning farmers, concerning herders?
You can make a pronouncement, but it takes enforcement of such pronouncement. The security agencies, they are doing little or nothing because they are their brothers. We must be frank, we must be sincere to ourselves. As a governor, you can make a proclamation, but you are not the one to.
And the in-season, should I call it in-season now? The continuous grid collapse. Please stay with us on ATN. Thank you so much for staying right here with us. We'll move to our next story that's talking about power. We have reports that the Minister of Power, Chief Adebayo Adelabu, has directed the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, and other agencies to commence immediate implementation of the recommendations from an interagency committee focused on reducing grid collapses. This move follows recent disturbances to the national grid, which experienced a frequency spike on November 7, 2024. TCN reported that recovery efforts are underway, with some regions like the Abuja axis restored quickly after the incident. Bolaji Tunji, the Special Advisor on Strategic Communications, conveyed the Minister's commitment to stabilizing the grid with the committee's recommendations aimed at providing both immediate and long-term solutions. TCN General Manager Ndidimba added that critical repairs are ongoing on key transmission lines and substations, such as the Shiroro Mando line and Jeba transmission substation upgrades. The TCN had acknowledged that while the repair works may result in intermittent disruptions, these measures are essential to enhance grid resilience and minimize future collapses. The company appealed for public understanding as it remained focused on ensuring a stable power supply essential for Nigeria's socio-economic growth. Power is very important, like they have stated, in the economic growth of any nation. It affects every aspect of that nation down to security. So if there's a grid collapse, it calls for attention. It is a national concern. But then when we start having grid collapses over and over again, and then you have it within a short interval, then there's more to the problem than whatever, than just something that is beyond human control right now. There is more, and it needs to be looked into. But then we've had the minister telling us, we even discussed something yesterday on the statement of the minister, and the fact that we should wait for 6 months. In the next 6 months, we'll have less of that, and we'll have the whole...
Our economy is power-driven.
Which one do we even have bigger now? The national grid or the national grid, like you said?
The national grid, that one should collapse permanently. And once it collapses permanently, Nigeria will become a better place for you and I. But our economy being power-driven, the grid that we're managing to sustain our transmission line shouldn't collapse per second or at intervals like that. That means it leaves a question mark. What causes this collapse? Is it a case of vandalism? Is it a case of obsolete lines that maybe once there's sudden rain or wind, it collapses? These are things that we need to ask. If it has to do with faulty lines, then there should be proper reinforcement. If it has to do with vandalism, criminal acts, then they need to do some kind of searching, ask questions, increase surveillance to know where the point where these things are going.
There are some things that should not be heard of. There are some things that should not be heard of.
Of course.
There are some things that should just be taken care of. Like Nigerians should not even know how it is being done. Not that you shouldn't give them that information, but they should not even have a reason to want to find out. Imagine everybody now asking questions like, oh, why is the grid collapsing? What are the technicalities? So you now have to come out as a minister explain to Nigerians that, oh, this is what happened. Using terminologies that people do not even understand. So I'm just imagining that this happened in other climes.
If this happens in other climes regularly, somebody will lose his job.
That is exactly what I am
saying. And if somebody doesn't lose his job, that person will go willingly if there's a system that is trying to sabotage the person's effort. So these are the questions we need to ask. What are the remote and immediate causes of this constant collapse of the national grid? Because if we don't know the remote and immediate cause, then a solution is not in view.
The minister has explained the causes, but the thing is, some of the explanation that he gave, like I said, using terminologies that people do not understand.
But should tell us if it's vandalization, if it's as a result of the lines, most of the being weak, so it collapses. We should know.
I know when they talked about vandalism was when some of the northern states did not have power, and that's when they said, oh, vandalism and all of that. But then, like I said, some things should not be heard of. Normally, when this is a national asset, there should be security on ground.
You know, like I always say, our greatest problem in Nigeria is that we're hardly proactive. We've always been reactionary. We only wait for problems to come, we start solving. They don't envisage. And so, okay, in the nearest future, we're going to have this kind of challenges. Let's work towards curbing it in case it comes up.
I don't even believe that we do not have security to protect some of these assets.
Then our also problem should be maintenance culture. Because one thing is to site a facility. Another thing is, what are the steps you take to maintain it regularly? If you don't maintain it, it will collapse. And our greatest problem in Nigeria has always been maintenance.
But there are some things that should not be, we should not talk about issues with maintenance for. For instance, if we're talking about issues, maybe there's a park, like one of the parks we have, one of the notable parks we have in Nigeria. When I was going through documentaries, not just one, documentaries on the park, the current state of that park. And I found out that people were saying that people do not go to those parks anymore. They don't usually have people coming in anymore, just a few people. And then the workers of these places we're saying something, that the issue they have is maintenance, and so they had to lock up some parts. They no longer use it. That is bad, but it is understandable. How can we be having issues of maintenance with something that has to do with, you know, power, especially something that feeds the nation?
There are plans for me. There must be plans for maintenance, because
exactly.
These are lines, and in as much as they are lines, it's either the weather will affect it, because of the kind of rainfall we have here. There must, you see, the greatest challenge is that we were not proactive. Even if we are proactive, even if funds are kept aside for it, they don't even use it for such thing because it has not happened. Somebody somewhere will just be fleeting those funds, and any day it happens, it becomes a challenge. Otherwise, I strongly believe that most of these things, they have voted out funds for it, but the implementation part of it is another problem we have.
That's what I'm asking. We've had this collapse now over and over again. It didn't just happen once, right? If it happens once, we'd say, okay, maybe it wasn't planned, maybe it's something natural, maybe it was a natural disaster, like they would always call the flooding, and then it happens again and again and again. over again. So my question now is our response. What would you say about our response to this situation?
Our response to this situation has been quite abysmal. It's been very slow, and in some situations, no response at all until it gets to the final stage where it becomes a major problem.
But with this that we have now, what case would you say it is? Is it a case of a slow response or a case of no response?
It's a case of either no response and it has lingered, so it has become a challenge. Ordinarily, if you notice a problem and you nip it in the bud, you discover that it won't escalate, it won't go beyond that point. But when it starts coming, you look at it, it's no problem, so long as it's still working.
So the statement by the minister, you do not see that as a response?
It's not they should go to work. It's not about talk. We've had so much talk with Nigerians, we've heard so much. It's now for them to transform those talk into work.
But we have the power has been restored already. Don't you think that's work being done?
If the power has been restored, what did they do to make it? Because for me, any form of restoration should be long-lasting. It's not something that it relapses. So what they are doing for me is more of patchment or patching than the real work.
But he has already told us that this might take some time to have it permanently, taken care of.
Let them do the work.
All right, let's see how that goes. Like my guest has said, we're going to hold the minister to his words and we'll hold him responsible for the words that he has said concerning how that will be handled. But then we have another story here from another sector, the petroleum sector. Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association Nigeria Pengusin has strongly condemned the use of military force to evict workers from the Orushetimeyin oil and gas rig. And Pengusin leaders Festus Osifo and Lumumba Okubawa, in a statement, called the action barbaric and in violation of both the Nigerian constitution and labor laws. The union claims that certain companies, despite agreements with the NUPRC, have repeatedly failed to meet worker entitlements, with some dues pending since 2022. Pengusin has warned of possible strike action if such treatment continues and urged human rights groups and international organizations to speak out against the violence, asserting that silence will be complicity. The association is demanding a transparent investigation into the incident to hold those responsible accountable, and is calling for stronger protection to ensure worker safety and respect for labor rights in the oil and gas sector. Just yesterday, we heard doctors complaining about one of their members not being treated properly by a commissioner, and they threatened to go on strike. And now we have Pengusin threatening to go on strike because of the action of military against their workers, which they are not comfortable with, and according to them, it's against the human rights. Who gets to suffer when the strike comes on?
It's you and I, not even them. But it's quite unfortunate. Even the Bible says a workman deserves his wages. So these are people who are working tirelessly day and night to make sure that the oil and gas industry, which has been the mainstay of our economy, is working. So they deserve their wages, no matter what happens, because these people, they work under high-level risk. So they should be paid. But what I find very funny is the hard in this country, not even the situation now that is happening in the oil and gas, but if you look at it from the broader spectrum, where prices of goods, even the current wage implementation, I mean the minimum wage crisis. Oh, look at, if you see the leadership of the TUC, the NUPENG, the NLC, Pengasan, they are all government apologists. Gone are the days when we really had strong. For me, Labour died after Oshiomhole. For me, NUPENG died after Frank Ovie-Kokori. Since then, we now have people who at the dying minute, they sell out the interest of their association.
But how does that affect what has happened now with the scenario of
if they shut down tools, if they shut down tools completely, this company, they will beg them. There are certain things, even in Europe, there are some things you don't do to NUPENG. or the PTDs, the junior workers. There are certain things you don't want, because most of this association, it is believed that injury to one should be injury to all. And if they see it in that light, most of these companies will be brought to their knees.
But that's the case now. They are actually threatening to go on a strike.
Let them do it and ensure that it is rapid and spontaneous.
But if they're as weak as you have claimed or alleged, do you think that they would have threatened the strike and it would be taking the direction?
It's leadership that always gives directive. And once leadership gives directive, followers would. But in a state where leadership has been compromised, as a follower, you have little or nothing to do. You are at the mercy of your your employer. If you do anything that is contrary, you get boots. In fact, the way they will ease you up, it's be like a dream to you. But if it's something that is all-encompassing, you can't sack everybody at the same time.
But let's go back to my question now. If they are as weak as you have claimed, if Pinkerton is as weak as you have stated, then do you think that they would take this step that they are taking now towards threatening? Remember, you said if it was when they were strong, they would have dropped their tools, like you put it. They would have gone on strike. But that's the same thing they are doing now. So what makes the difference?
Well, for me, in my place, it's always believed that a dog that will bite
does not bark
much.
So what do you call this?
Well, for
this
me,
is them
it's
calling
more like
for
the
action
act,
to be done.
It's more like the act or action of a toothless bulldog. They should act, shut down to. Not that I will. Are they Williams?
How do you just shut down tools? Don't you think that that's going to, in a very large way, affect even more than just the
give
people
them a short notice?
That's the notice that they have given.
And once it expires, they should back it up with action.
Okay, so we're looking forward to what happens after the ultimatum has expired.
Of course.
If nothing is being done. But then, like you said, the people who it will get to affect, this is not a time when the nation needs strikes, especially from key, should I call them stakeholders now?
Yeah, critical stakeholders or key players.
Don't you think this is going to really affect the nation negatively, considering where we are presently in our economy?
No gain without pain. These people who are working day and night tirelessly in various oil platforms just to make sure that we hit our targets, they shouldn't be shortchanged. They should not be shortchanged.
If everybody goes on strike, what happens? Not to say they're not supposed to be paid. Of course they're supposed to be paid.
Then they should be paid.
But then, if every sector begins to go on strike, where would we be as a nation? We have the lecturers complaining about, in fact, that's the next story we're taking. They have their own wages or monies that have not been paid.
See, how many times have we heard politicians, political appointees,
that is the question
political office holder threaten strike action?
Or lawmakers saying they're going on strike because they've not been paid. Well, so why is this always the case?
Their welfare is paramount. They give to them in excess and as at when due. But the goose that lays the egg, the people that works day and night, they don't get what they're supposed to get. So I asked this question. I said, when last did you hear politicians, legislators?
Question is not even when last did you hear. The question should be,
have you ever heard them that they are going on strike?
Have you ever heard that happen? That should be the question.
Yes, as senators or House of Reps members or state assembly members. So okay, we are strike today, we have not been paid. It's unheard of.
That's not all. That's not all about that. But let's quickly bring this in, since we're talking about non-payment of salaries. And we have reports that the Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Universities, SANU, has urged the federal government to pay 3 months' worth of withheld salaries still owed to non-teaching staff in federal universities. SANU President Mohammed Ibrahim emphasized the need for the remaining 50 billion naira in earned allowances alongside the arrears of a 25/35% increment and the wage award. The union's call follows a recent indefinite strike by SANU and the Non-Academic Staff Union of Educational and Associated Institutions, NASU, which began on October 28 due to withheld salaries from 2022. On November 2nd, the government released 1 month of the outstanding salaries, prompting the unions to suspend the strike from November 5. The upcoming SANU Delegates Conference, scheduled for November 13, will focus on respecting collective bargaining agreements in the education sector. Please, let's stop there. Respecting collective bargaining agreements in the education sector. Some people have made talks or said things like, oh, there's no unity and all that. In fact, before I start analyzing that, I would like you to give the analysis on that yourself, because I see you smiling concerning
our greatest challenge in this country, policy formulation, entering into agreement has never been a challenge to us as a people in Nigeria. What has been our greatest challenge is keeping to terms and conditions of every agreement. It's our greatest problem, is a fundamental problem. Not until we learn how to keep agreement, we will still be groping in the dark. It's supposed to be, once we agree, everybody keeps his own side of the agreement instead of the other party breaching it. Once the other party breaches an agreement, there's always an issue. You can enter into a collective bargaining an agreement after collective bargaining between the association and representative of government, and at the end of the day, they decide to call off the strike and go back to work, only for government now pay these people what we have agreed with together. They don't pay them. So it's always been a problem in this country. It's a problem of implementation, and not until we learn how to implement and keep agreement, we'll keep having challenges.
Is it really a case of us not knowing how to keep agreement, or is there more to the government not keeping its side?
They are not sincere. They enter most of these things with so much insincerity.
Let's look
because
at this
if you are sincere
yes.
When entering an agreement, you don't need to be forced to play your own part of the agreement. It's because one party is not sincere. It's a marriage of two strange bedfellows.
And we get that a lot in marriages.
Of course.
Even though that's not our focus. Let's go back to what we're saying about the government not keeping its side of the agreement. Now, we have different administrations that have come in to power. Let's look at the ASU agreements with government down to 2009. How many administrations have come in and left since that period? Different agreements, and then you hear that the government has not kept to his own side of the bargain. And that's what we're trying to find out, why that is usually the case. The case where that agreement is done and please take note of that, different administrations, yet it is not being kept.
First, for me, I think it has to do with lack of continuity, because we don't even have a template. If there's a template, you discover that once you come, it's like a relay race. Once they hand over the baton to you, you must maintain your lane. You must not drop the baton till you get to the terminal point. So the case of Nigeria has always been lack of continuity, and it has affected most of the agreement, especially when it has to do with government. Any person that comes, because of there's a lack of template, everybody wants to run his or her own agenda. But in Senate climes, it's not that way. It's already something that has been set. It's a program that is running. So as soon as you're coming, it has to be in line with that program, because these are laudable programs, people-oriented things. So, power actually belongs to the people. So they will definitely vote who will always walk in line with the needs and aspiration of the people and not his own.
So if we say the problem is continuity, then what happened to that administration that entered into the agreement, keeping it?
Because there is no sincerity.
That's to show you that there's more to the problem than just continuity.
Of course,
there's really more to it.
It's a fundamental problem. First, I mentioned insincerity on the part of even one of the parties entering the agreement, being the government. First, it has to do with insincerity before you talk of even continuity. If for me, I enter into an agreement with someone with some level of insincerity, you taking over from me, I don't think you would want to toe that line, because it already has a fundamental default or a fundamental defect. So you wouldn't want to inherit it. But if it's something that is done with open mind, it's something that is done with sincerity of purpose, the next person coming in will definitely have human face to run with it.
Let's look at other issues here. the FG is not just a name. These are usually individuals occupying these offices. So if we say the FG is not keeping to an agreement, let's look at the individuals. Do some of these our leaders really know what, are they giving enough orientation to know what it means to sit on that seat? Or is there more to it that when one enters into that office, everything just changed? Or changes, all the plans that you had, everything just changes, and you begin to work according to the way your predecessor actually worked?
But in Nigeria, it's not like that. Every other person that comes has his or her own agenda. That is totally different.
But it's usually tagged under agreements not being kept, greed, insincerity. That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
How come everyone who sits in that office, maybe not everyone, but in cases of agreements not being made and some of the things that are supposed to be done not being done, does it mean that everybody just passes this baton of insincerity to the next person? That's the question.
Well, you have just answered it yourself. That
I didn't answer it.
You did.
I asked the question.
Because nobody wants to inherit a liability.
What exactly is the problem?
I say it's a fundamental problem. Nobody wants to inherit a liability.
What is the orientation like when one wants to come into leadership and power?
First, leadership has to do with call to service and service to the people. But in Nigeria here, I think it's a reverse situation where it has to do with amassment of wealth, personal aggrandizement, and how to better the lot of your immediate family, not environment. Ordinarily, if you are called to serve, is to serve the people. It comes with a lot of sacrifices.
Yes, it does.
You put the people first and not you.
And that's why I'm asking, what is the orientation usually like before people handle leadership positions?
Well, they come, they tell us everything we want to hear.
No, I mean for the candidates now. Is there usually some sort of orientation to help them understand what they are getting into and the roles that they're supposed to play?
For me, I think
it begs that question.
Yeah, it's a systemic failure. What I say is a systemic failure. The system itself is already default, already has a defect. So it must start from the scratch. There must be a reorientation. Letting these people know that coming into power, assuming a position, is to serve the people. And you must put the people first. The interest of the people first, and not you. If not, we do have some National Assembly members who are there on full time, collecting huge amount of money every month, doing nothing. While if you go to the floor of the house, some of them are even sleeping during proceeding. Some has been in the house for 4 years. They cannot even have one motion tied to their name.
And you know, we see that a lot during plenary. And you just see them gisting. Sometimes when I watch, I used to ask questions like, how did they know what was discussed with all these distractions with all these distractions that are going on? And
the next thing you hear, they've gone on recess. They are resuming. So this thing's supposed to be on part-time.
Let's go back to the statement you made earlier on how many times have we really heard politicians going on strike because they've not been paid, and then workers who are paid peanuts sometimes would go on strike because they've been owed salaries for years. You'll be hearing since 2022 and all that. Are we presenting ourselves as a walkover as a people? Is there any way we are presenting ourselves as a walkover?
Nigerians are very resilient. Nigerians are very unique people. Nigerians are people you cannot find. It's very rare to find the kind of spirit that an average we have. It's very, so we are not walkover.
So why does it seem like it just keeps happening over and over
because
again? If there's a problem and there are two parties
we are not
involved,
walkover.
yes.
The problem is that Nigerians are docile. Why I say Nigerians are docile? Nobody wants to be mentioned. Nobody wants to take the bull by the horn. So long as it doesn't concern me, everybody, there's this apathy.
But even when there's a resistance from the parties involved, there's always still that case. Look at these people are threatening strike. Look at Sanu just finished their strike. So there's usually saying Nigerians are docile, I know there's that part where people feel like we can do more than we are doing. But these people are going on strike. They're speaking up. They're penning down. They're staying back at home. They're doing all these things. But yet it continues.
If you go on strike, okay, like a case of this one now that they went on strike, how many days? They were paid 1 month. What stops them from saying, okay, we have collected 1 month. We still stay at home. Pay us complete. Because the government have never been sincere. They will tell you that, okay, so period we will do X, Y, Z. Or have they ever kept that part of the agreement without being forced? Check since the history of ASU SANU till date. They've always entered one form of agreement or the other. And at the end of the day, you will see them, because of the interest of the children that are at home, that have not gone to school, Nigerians will beg them. They will whip up sentiment without even looking into their own welfare, and they will down tools and come back. The same government will do what they know best how to do, to default agreement.
You just mentioned the party that we haven't mentioned since we started this conversation. That's the students.
Yes.
They get affected.
Of course.
These are lives of individuals that are put on hold because they have to stay back at home because some lecturers are striking.
They are suffering because of a systemic failure from the part of the government, given the fact that they have not been able to keep their own part of the agreement. There are always disputes, and at the end of the day, they will look at it on its merit.
Do we have to let the students keep suffering these issues?
Do we also want a situation where we will churn out half-baked graduates, where at the end of the day, a program that is supposed to last 4 years, they stay up to 6 years?
But that's the issue now. That's what's happening.
Do we continue in it?
That's what I'm asking. Do we allow the students to keep suffering the fight between the federal government and these lecturers and non-academic staff? Because from your recommendations, you have talked about strike. And the fact that when they go on strike, they should not just, resume if their demands are not completely met. So what happens to the students when all of these strikes and all of that are happening?
It's quite unfortunate. It's quite pathetic. But behind every story, or behind every glory, there must be a story.
Don't you think it's being
and
unfair?
No pain. No gain without pain.
So who should have that pain now? You're putting the pain on the students. These people,
if you have a parent who is a university don, who is a lecturer, or who is a non-academic staff in the university, and you see them go through this on a daily basis, how would you feel?
And having to see your children at home where they're supposed to be in school, how would one feel? So it's also on the other side. I feel like when we have these conversations,
has to be more on the government. For me also, I think there should be some form of sympathy strike to bring people to their knees.
What do you mean by sympathy strike?
Non-academic staff,
yes,
they are having issues with the system, and they discover that they are being taken for granted. The academic side should also join the strike and protest.
Oh, so the school should shut down.
Under protest,
and
then
the students should go back home.
When they look at it, they are not listening to them. Maybe the NUPENG or
they should join the strike.
Join sympathy with other associations.
Wow.
So that way they will bring government to their knees.
So the country should be on standstill.
That's how they want it.
Who wants it? That's how who wants it now.
That's how the government wants it. So by the time other associations joins a strike in form of sympathy, because whether I like it or not, in trade unionism, they always tell you that injury to one is injury to all. So by the time they start, the government will definitely come back.
Now let's look at the effects.
Okay, now let me tell you,
yes.
As an employer within your subsystem in your house, you come back. Your security man has gone on strike. Your cleaner has gone on strike. Your porter has gone.
Because you didn't pay your security man.
So then at the end of the day, they are there. You can't send them away to bring new people because you can't pay them. Even if you go and bring police to
but
police will say, "Okay, pay these people."
Even these people on strike will be affected.
Granted, they will be affected, but for once, let them take the pain so that at the end of the day, they will be gained.
Let's look at the effects now.
But the only problem we have is that, you know where government used to bring them to their knees? No work, no pay.
That's the issue.
That's where government, so most of the times, if they are virtually coerced into coming back, because once you strike, they will tell you no work, no pay. And before you know what is happening, they come back again under that same.
And the government can let go of this staff. They can lay off. If they find out that, oh, these people are on strike, they're not coming back to work, they can lay them off.
These are the issues.
These are the issues.
So for me, that's where we get to a situation.
We should look at the
that's why
effects.
we can call for sympathy strike.
So they can't lay off everyone. but then let's go back to the effect. I've been saying let's go to the effects now. The people who are actually going to be affected by all this, the students.
Yes, students.
Don't you think this is also going to lead to insecurity in our environment? When the students, big minds, you know, smart brains are left at home doing nothing, idle, what do you think they'll start doing? And now we who are on strike, by we now I mean the parents, I'm involving myself now. The parents who are on strike, what then happens to them? Because they will get affected by these insecurities. So that is crippling the country. Don't you see it that way?
Yes, it's a way. It will. But like I said, for you to gain, you must go through pain.
Is there a way we can actually channel this, since we say we want the government to feel pain, right? Is there a way we can channel the pain to the rightful people, the people who should actually feel the pain, and not circling the pain amongst ourselves?
You know, there's a way a strike will get to when you start having sympathy strike from other associations. They tell you why we are going on strike is because you are having issues with these people. Okay, you have. At that point, the people might rise against them.
How is strike the only option here? Because that's the only thing that you have recommended.
What else do you want to do? Do you want to go into another round of negotiation? You can't go into another round of negotiation. But it's just so pathetic that these workers are at the mercy of government. Once you strike, they always threaten them with no work, no pay. And once it gets to like 2 or 3 months, they threaten you that they want to lay you off. So before you know it, they hurriedly come back again to work under that inhuman condition.
All right, we hope that more will be done concerning it. We do not enjoy the strikes. I'm very sure that the people who are affected, the students, do not enjoy the strike. Nobody would want a situation where there'll be strikes. Like I said, there are lots of effects down to insecurity, and that's not a good thing. We're trying to curb the rising cases of insecurity that we have in Nigeria, and then we should not be looking at ways to add to it and increase the cases of insecurity, you know. And don't you think this is also, this looks like it's also going to discourage people from education? There's some students who already feel, from secondary school, they already feel like there's no need to go to university.
No, whether you like it or
so
not.
So education, these strikes that go on with schools, ASU and the rest of them, how has this affected the number of people we have coming into the universities? How has this affected the mindset of young people concerning education?
It has not affected because everybody wants his or her child to at least get that basic university degree, which is
the students now,
yeah,
the youths now. How is it affecting their own mindset concerning
education? In a way, because one, by the time this strike lingers, they might want to engage in some antisocial vices, some form of things that are not palatable if they are occupied academically. You know, they always say that the idle mind is the devil's workshop, but if they are properly engaged, they won't have time to think of other negative vices or antisocial vices. So it's a two-way thing. If they are occupied, but if they are not occupied.
Because we hear children saying there's no need for them to go to university.
This is a serious problem. That there's no need to have a university education. I tell that person that I think that person needs to be examined. Well, I say that person needs to be examined. With the way Nigeria is now, nobody should settle for a school certificate.
But they are faves. The people they think are successful, some of them do not have that certificate.
But they still go back and acquire it soon or later.
No but matter how the students don't know that, yes.
They don't know that, but most of these people, that at some point, they feel that something is missing. even amongst their so-called rich people when they are talking.
Okay.
So they must also have it to add to their CV to boost their personality. So whoever says that a university degree doesn't matter, I think that person needs to be examined. He needs to go through a psychiatric or a psychopathic test.
Would you really blame these individuals? I think what that person needs is an orientation, like the one you're giving now, telling the importance of university education.
Of course.
Because too many people believe now that there's really no need for that.
There
People see success as money.
It's not all about
having money. So when they go on social media and they see the people who have money that they follow, they realize that, oh, this person is not even a graduate. This is a dropout. So I have hope
still go back.
without going to school.
They still go see such people. They still go back and acquire it.
Yeah,
some get it quietly. Some of them they acquire it quietly.
Since we talked about orientation, what about really giving these students the orientation, these young people the orientation that they need about the importance of university education?
For me,
backing it up with taking off these strikes.
See, for me, I always tell people that the basis for the training of every child should be the home. Once a child misses home training, there is nothing the school, the church, and the society can do. Because the society, the church, and the school are being fed with what the home presents to them. So as parents, you must first of all train your child, instill that discipline and virtues, so that by the time he or she goes to school, the school, they are accepting a product that is in line with the vision and aspiration of the school. But if you give them a child that has faulty foundation, if you are not careful, that child will corrupt other children. So for me, it begins from the home, not the school, not the church, and not the larger society.
Where is the lie in that? There's no lie in that. That's a big truth. We're going to short break now, and after that, the conversation will continue. I have an interesting story that I want to bring your way after this break. Please don't go anywhere. Thank you so much for staying right here with us. I told you I have a juicy story I'd like to bring your way, and right away I'll bring it, but I still have my guests with me in the studio, and I appreciate you for your time. Franklin Nwadiolo, the recently elected chairman of Obaru local government area in Anambra State, Nigeria, has been arrested in Texas, USA over an alleged $3.3 million romance scam. According to a statement from the U.S. Department of Justice, Nwadiolo faces a 14-count charge of wire fraud and could face up to 20 years in prison if convicted. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, that's FBI, reportedly arrested the 40-year-old upon his arrival in Texas, and he is expected to be transferred to the Western District of Washington for arraignment. Nwadiolo allegedly used multiple online aliases, including Giovanni, to deceive his victims through dating sites where he posed as a military officer unable to meet in person due to deployment. He reportedly fabricated stories to persuade victims to send him money, resulting in substantial financial losses for several individuals. The indictment outlines several specific scams, including convincing one victim to pay a $150,000 military fine, defrauding another of $330,000, and directing another to transfer $270,000 for supposed cryptocurrency investments. The case is being prosecuted by Assistant U.S. Attorney Sok Jiang. Because of cases like this, we have issues as Nigerians to liaise or do business with people who are foreigners. Because by the time you send them a message and let them know you're Nigerian, they start looking at you in a certain way.
Well, for me, I think it's quite absurd. It's pathetic. The DSS, what is their major operation, or what do they actually, because for any person to contest election, beginning from councillor, you must go through DSS screening. So didn't the DSS do a background check on him before this time to ensure or to know the kind of person he is, so that they would have even disqualified him. So that even if they find out, they can also hand him over to these people for proper prosecution. So for me, I think the DSS didn't do their work very well. That's why this kind of person can even come up for an elective position in Nigeria. Ordinarily, if they go through that screening and they are properly drilled, this kind of persons cannot contest an election.
And this is embarrassing to us.
It's a national disgrace.
Having in mind his position.
Yes. So that's why I say they didn't do their proper background check on him. If not, he wouldn't have even contested the election in the first place. Then talk less of being a local government chairman.
Yeah, but we have had cases where background checks are done.
Yeah, it wasn't done proper. Ordinarily, if you do a proper background check on someone, you expand your search, do a proper this, because there are certain positions you must have to collaborate with other agencies to find out, that's why they say to do a background check. Once you put up your document, they could use your name. Okay, does he have any record of case within so period? And before you know, we live in a world where every information is at your fingertip. All it just is one click away.
But we have had cases where some information were released to the public, even during some elections, down to presidential election, where you find out that you start seeing reports of a candidate being involved in some sort of fraudulent activities or crime in the past.
Yeah,
and yes.
Once it happens like that, you can reactivate the case.
Who can reactivate the case in this situation?
Once the DSS finds anything incriminating, the person already having a criminal record somewhere, they could report him back to the relevant authority, and he could be gotten for prosecution. But that's why, what is the aim of sending candidates to DSS for check? Is it just to go and submit documents?
That's another question we need to ask. The process of these elections, do we really use the information that are gotten, if at all any information is gotten from, like you said, the DSS screening and all that? Because I just made reference to some elections that we have had where it will be in public knowledge that this person has been involved in fraudulent activities in the past, and then you still see the person, everything just goes on like normal,
because
like nothing
they
happened.
have failed to do their work properly. Maybe I just believe that those people go there to submit file, they chat with them, and they pay a certain amount of money, and they go home. Ordinarily, if you're properly drilled, they will need to. If you dig deep, you will find out certain things.
So that's taking it back to the election, should I call it malpractice now, or corruption that we have going on in Nigeria? These people, this FBI arresting this man, it doesn't tell well, like we've said earlier, of us as a nation. Aside the fact that we already have cases of people outside Nigeria seeing Nigerians in a particular light, aside that, it also tells the kind of leaders that we probably have manning some positions.
Of course. Why I say so, we discover that now we no longer even elect the best. We now go for people who we think can play along the line. Those people who we think can conform with, quote and unquote, the lines of or what the Godfathers want. Ordinarily, if we have a people-oriented election where the best candidate must emerge, certain people will not win election.
So how do we come out of this now? How do we solve this particular problem?
The DSS going forward, whenever someone wants to run for election, they should do proper background check on the person. When I mean proper background check, and again too, most of this DSS screening should be like 6-7 months before the election, so that in case the candidates of a party, they can always substitute. So long as you buy that form, expression of intent, you should just be subjected to DSS screening, not when you have emerged a candidate of a party. Because once you emerge a candidate of a party, the party will protect you. And this is the product of it. But if it's done 6 months, as soon as you buy the expression of interest, they will drill you. They will run a proper background check. And once they get fined or find anything incriminating, It's okay, this person has a question to answer.
There have been an increase from the data and statistics in cybercrime in Nigeria. More people are getting involved, more people are getting exposed, down to very young people who have found out about this. We even hear about sort of like minor academies where they are being taught how these things are being done.
You know, I made a statement here. I say it has to do with failure of family. Because if most parents have not failed in their responsibility, as a parent, you must take proper look of your child. If there's a certain change, you nip it in the bud.
Don't you think some parents are in support of this?
They are, because most families, they have failed. They cannot even afford the basics. And once a family or a parent has failed in his responsibility, disorder becomes the order of the day at home, where you see children now, they now fend for themselves and also provide for the family. At a certain age, your child, there are certain things your child, you're not supposed to see with him. Even at my age today, there are certain things my mother will ask me, my brother, how far, how did you get this? And I will explain, I did this, I did that before I was able to get this. Unlike a situation where you see children who are still in school, some they've not gotten into school, you see the kind of cars they drive, you see the kind of phones they use, and parents are supporting them. And I see this thing is a time bomb waiting to explode. And sorry to say also, most of them will never get to a certain age.
That's for the people carrying out the crime. Why would you say so?
No problem, we're watching.
But then it's really not something that is laughable. It's not, because this is a big issue. I was speaking to a 15-year-old the other day, and he told me in confidence that all his friends, those were his words, all his friends are involved in cybercrime. He told me that he's just the one who decided not to, because his mother always tells him that if he does something wrong, he'll get caught. So he has that ideology that he's going to get caught.
Why I said most of them will not get to a certain age. This thing goes with, is interwoven. Cybercrime, drug, and alcohol. These are things that are interwoven. And before you know, some of them, they might even consume overdose, and it affects them.
Do you think it's a case of orientation that should be given to the parents? Do we have parents who do not really know the ills that are involved in these monies that their children say they are making with their phones?
They know, but because they have failed.
No, that's for some parents now. That's what I'm asking. Do you think...
See, I always tell people, parenting has different... Apart from the fact they are supposed to provide, you're also supposed to protect, and you're also supposed to mentor. It's not just about provision. You must also protect that child, and you also mentor that child, so that that child would say, okay, I want to be like so person, I want to be like my dad.
That's if even you are actually, if you have a good record or yourself, because how do you mentor someone else when
that's why I said most
when you're even struggling
it's
with
a product of failed family upbringing.
Are we saying we have... Do you know the percentage of these children getting involved in this?
It's a time bomb waiting to explode.
Are we now saying all our families, like all these families, are failed families? Is that what we're saying?
Apart from that one, why I say most of them are failed. If you have a child or a teenager who is under negative peer influence, you would know. And you cut it off. I was discussing with somebody the other day. I said, see, let me tell you one thing about parenting. I grew up in an environment where they ask us, where are you going to? And you say, I'm coming. I'm coming is not an address. There must be specific where I'm going to, who I'm going to meet, when are you coming back. Also that friend, which is quote and unquote that, let that friend come home. We know the friend. They know his or her parents. And before you know, there's always that check.
So you're saying we don't have that?
Most of those things are gone. Because parents are too busy. Mother is working, father is working.
Okay.
They come back late at night pursuing
But
one.
mother was working and father was working back then. What happened?
But they come back. At least we had parents then who, it's either you're a business, you sell in the market, or you're a teacher. You must come back or close the same time with the children, or maybe 2 hours after the children. But today you get families where children are left in the hands of maids. The father comes back very late, the mom comes back very late. Sunday morning, everybody's rushing out to church. From one after church, one meeting. Monday, again, the same routine.
But you would agree that we have some families who probably got it right with discipline, but they have their children deviating.
Because of negative peer influence.
How do parents really look out for this negative peer influence? I know someone
You
who
must
that
see,
has
there's one thing they always
damaged.
tell us.
I know someone who that has damaged. Because when I look at him today and I look at him while we were growing up, I remember the influence that he had in the environment at that time as we were teenagers. So how would parents really put their eyes down regarding the negative peer influence that their children may be involved in?
For those of us who grew up, there's one thing they always tell us when we're playing football: keep your eyes on the ball. If your eyes are on the ball, you'll be part of the flow of the game. But if your eyes are not on the ball, there's that distraction. So as a parent,
Who's the ball?
your child.
All right, a quick one. Let's just quickly look at this story before we wrap up. This one's talking about Canada announcing that it will no longer automatically grant 10-year multiple entry visas to tourists. The new guidelines released by Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada empower immigration officers to issue visas with shorter durations based on individual assessments, moving away from a default extended validity period. And according to IRCC, the change is part of a broader strategy to manage temporary immigration levels, address housing shortages and control the rising cost of living. Under this revised policy, frequent visitors to Canada may face increased application costs and shorter-term visas, potentially affecting those who regularly travel for work or leisure. This will also affect people who are going for, educational purposes, JAPA through education, JAPA through different reasons. This is going to affect them.
I think what they are doing is a direct reaction to the JAPA syndrome. Not only in Nigeria, but all over Africa, where people are moving. Once there's a massive influx, now these are Sena climbs where they have statistics, they have records of things. So I believe that it's a direct reflection of what they have noticed and also making projection. So this is one of the decisions they have taken from their projection. And it will also affect those with genuine reasons now who want to go. These are the problem when we have influx.
When you hear stiffer measures, you wonder how stiff these measures
are. They have facilities.
Aside the measures we already have that are stiff.
These are places where they have records. So they know who goes and they know who comes. And to affect a situation